name is Lauren Hollows, and I'm here for NOI Education Services, and we are continuing our RTO Standards 2024 series, which focuses on the new RTO draft standards coming into effect on 1/1/25. Now, last time we started talking about standards 1.1 and 1.2. Didn't actually get into 1.2 because I was too busy running my mouth on 1.1. So today we are going to continue on with that. We're going to talk a little bit more about specifically clause 1.1c. We're going to touch very briefly on 1.1d. 1.1e, and then hopefully we'll get into 1.2 in our next video. So this is all about training, and as I said in our last video, which I will link to somewhere here, is that there is a much bigger focus on training in the new RTO standards. Training is all about clause 1.1 and 1.2, and 1.1 is really about being able to create learning resources that are engaging and that are well structured, and that's basically what we covered in our last video. Now, one of the other things that we are seeing, we did also cover this in our task series, so if you haven't checked that out, I strongly recommend you check that out too, is actually being able to differentiate and how they do talk about some very clear language when we talk about that training is structured. So one of the things that they have is 1.1c, and what that basically says is training is structured and paced to support learners to progress, providing sufficient time for instruction, practice, feedback, and assessment. 1.1d is training facilitation techniques, activities, and resources engage and motivate learners to support learner understanding. So that was really what our last video was all about, was being able to create materials that actually engage, motivate your learners that are well structured. But then the next part is obviously just thinking about that 1.1c, that training is paced to support learners to progress. Okay, so we're going to start to have to think a little bit more about progression of our learners as we go through this process. Again, what's your policies for that? Accelerate is a great system for that. Or what, do you have some things built into your student management system in relationship to being able to automate following up with learners, being able to flag for your admin or for your trainers when learners are falling behind, things like that. But there's 5 keywords in 1.1c, and I think 1.1c is going to be one of those clauses that it's just going to be one of the clauses that continually comes up in audit reports. We have that with the current standards, like sufficiency and validity consistently comes up in relationship to clause 1.8. 1.3, it always comes up in relationship to trainers and things like that. It was just those clauses that we just constantly see over and over again in all reports. And I really do think that this is going to be one of those ones. Training is structured and paced to support learners to progress, providing sufficient time for instruction, practice, feedback, and assessment. So that workflow of instruction, which I think is probably going to be defined as basically classroom lectures, online lectures, anytime that learners are being trained on knowledge, being, and being, lectured to or involved in discussions, anything like that is going to kind of fall into your instruction category. Practice, we've got our students doing things, and this is probably going to be one of the biggest areas, I think, particularly in relationship to CRICOS, in relationship to short courses. That's going to be something that's going to be interesting to see how that's evidenced and justified in a lot of RTOs, because I do think there are a lot of RTOs delivering certain qualifications where they're pretty much going straight into assessment, and then not really structuring in time for the learner to actually try stuff before they go straight into just being assessed on it. Feedback. So again, how are we actually evidencing feedback? So one of the things I see all the time is it's a hard copy practical assessment. It gets signed off by the trainer. The trainer writes some feedback on it. Admin results that piece of paper. It then gets filed and the learner never sees it again. So from the point at which the assessor provides the feedback in writing to the point at which the learner sees it, it doesn't occur, which seems weird. It seems weird, guys, that we would spend the time harassing our trainers to provide feedback, only to never give that feedback to the learner. So I really feel like there needs to be a process by which the learners are provided with feedback. And I think this is something the trainers actually do really well verbally. And it kind of sucks that we have to evidence it because as I said, I think the most valuable feedback that a student is ever going to get is actually going to be verbal feedback that they get from their trainer via discussions with that trainer. And so I think this might be a little bit of a curly Q one when it actually comes to evidencing it. But then we got to go into assessment. And look, my definition of assessment, and I think what the regulator's definition of assessment is going to be, that's really going to be where your summative assessment is coming into play. So instruction, practice, feedback, assessment is going to be a big focus. And then just underneath that, excuse me, just underneath that is 1.1e, where it says where the training product requires work integrated training, work placement, or other community-based learning. Necessary skills and knowledge are able to be attained in that environment. Okay. And I think this is really about when we're delivering training in a workplace, when we are putting them into a work placement, what structure have we put in place to make sure that that work placement is suitable? And again, I'm really sorry, I'm going to pick up quite close. It is not acceptable to do your placement, your work industry placement solely in a vegan restaurant. Okay. When you are choosing your restaurant, it's not acceptable to do it in a McDonald's. Okay. It's not acceptable. There's actually, I'll be honest, there's actually not a lot of restaurants that cover the full breadth and depth of that unit of competency. You have to do seafood. You have to do desserts. You have to do breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You have to do, I think, 2 or 3 different types of services. So not just a la carte. You've got to do like a la carte, and then you've either got to do like a buffet, or you've got to do a set plate menu, or things like that. There are a lot of restaurants that do not offer students an opportunity to do those things. A lot of restaurants will buy in their desserts or not offer them at all. Even when they do desserts, they may not do hot and cold desserts. A lot of restaurants might not do seafood. A lot of restaurants might not do meat. A lot of restaurants, it might just be curry, So there has to be a process by which we determine that workplace is acceptable. And if that workplace is not acceptable, like let's say it only does offer lunch and dinners, how are you as the RTO going to be able to support the student to do a breakfast, like some breakfast shifts somewhere? And I think it's been very frustrating for regulators to see a policy from RTOs going, well, you're responsible for managing your workplace. But then the RTO doesn't actually go and check to make sure that the workplace even meets the requirements of the unit. And then one of 2 things happen. Either the workbook is tick and flicked, students lie. I've seen students go to the point of like paying their workplace supervisors to lie, to like forging menus and things like that. Like I've gone and I've checked the menu online, and I've checked the menu that the learner's given me, and I'm like, this is like 6 different menu items that I know are not on your actual menu. Okay, students are clever, guys. You'd be amazed at what students will come up with to be able to get away with stuff. Especially when it means that they can stay in the country if they're a little bit cheeky. So I think it's really important that there are processes in place. That hospitality industry placement unit is definitely a goer for this one. The industry placement unit for the individual support. I still see a lot of RTOs that are only having students do 120 hours worth of placement. I strongly recommend you do 160. I have had multiple discussions with the regulators on this one. It's 120 hours for the skills of that particular unit. There are multiple other units in there that require workplace skills to be demonstrated as well, that have absolutely nothing to do with that 120 hours, like 160 hours. We'll probably do an awful lot better. Anyway, that's just me. So these are some of the things you've actually got to think about when it comes to thinking about your training. I think this is, as I said, look, great RTOs. You guys have been doing this for a while. There's a lot of great RTOs out there. I think the bulk of RTOs, which are like good RTOs, you guys are well-intentioned, you're doing your best, but cheese and crackers, as an RTO, you've got a lot of things to think about. We haven't really been focused on training because we know that we get audited, assessed so heavily on assessment, like on how we collect evidence of competency, but we just haven't really created a space to think about how we structure our training relevant to our cohort, how we make it engaging, upskilling our trainers on some of those tips to be engaging, because the attention economy is so different nowadays. Like I literally, you guys will not see videos over 15 minutes on our channel this year, pretty much for anything, because I know that people don't watch them. You guys stop listening to me after 15 minutes. I'm not surprised. I'm not that interested. I can only hold somebody's attention for 15 minutes. So these are just some of the things to think about, like how we actually go about making that work and really do focusing on training. I think the trainers are going to respond really well to it because trainers are in it because they love training. Like no trainer ever got into this industry going, I really want to get into this industry so that I can collect evidence of competency from my learners. Like said no trainer ever. Trainers get into it for the same reasons. They get into it because they want to pass on their skills. They are passionate about their industries and they really like working with, people who are less skilled and seeing them upskill and seeing what that provides to them and seeing the opportunities that creates for them and seeing how it positively impacts on their industry. Like these are all the reasons why our trainers get up every morning. They don't get up because they like collecting evidence of competency. That's left for crazy people like me. And I'm not well, so. So that's a little bit about that, guys. We do have one more on training. I knew I was going to blow this out, where we will talk about 1.2, which is industry engagement, and how that relates to training. We will come back for that, guys. I hope you have enjoyed this. Like, subscribe. Feel free to disagree, but do so respectfully. Seriously, if this is like the third video that you're watching and you haven't hit that subscribe, please hit that subscribe button. It helps me so much. Send it to a friend, send it to a friend who's in an RTO, send it to another trainer. Just say, hey, do me a favor. You just like and subscribe to this girl. Just listen to what she's saying. If you think I'm full of shit, tell me I'm full of shit, but do so respectfully. Because I'd like to learn from you guys as much as you learn from me. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this. Have a great day, guys. This is Lauren Hollows for NOI Education Services.